So recently, a bunch of unaired pilots found their way online, dating back to the 90s. What I want to do is look at these pilots and determine two things. 1. Did it have potential? And 2. How different would popular culture be if this pilot was picked up for series?
Your way is harsh and critical, mine is conversational and supportive.
Throw it!
Today we're cracking open the pilot vault to look at a show set before Jon Hamm starred in the movie The Corner Office. We're going to be looking at an unaired sitcom called Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. Now, joking aside, I don't think this show and the Jon Hamm movie are connected, unless it's all part of a Corner Office extended universe. You never know nowadays. This 2007 pilot was not picked up for series. It never aired, and it's been unseen for the longest time. Up until a week or so ago, when it found its way online. Now, the big question I had going into this was, did this show have the potential to be the next How I Met Your Mother?
No.
Now, the plot of this pilot revolves around what they describe as a sweet-natured young woman who struggles to get ahead in the corporate world. It's based on the best-selling book by the same name, written by Dr. Lois Frankel. It's basically a coaching book, teaching women how to achieve their personal and professional goals. But does it translate well into a sitcom? Not really. We'll get into why in a moment, but there's a bit with a footballer I have quite a big problem with. But anyway, let's delve into the unaired pilot of Nice Girls Don't Get the Corner Office. We start with quite a nice transition from a building to a model of a building. Immediately I was thinking that this show was going to be something special, at least on a directing standpoint. Jane Curtin plays Joy, an assistant who finds her boss dead in his office, leading to her losing her big fancy office and perfect job. We then cut to the star of the show, Jayma May's character, Angela, who has arrived at her workplace with some fresh scones. I really do think Jayma is made for sitcoms. She has this infectious smile that proper cheers you up, so it's kind of a shame that this never got picked up for series. Angela goes into her office and has some banter with her assistant. Immediately, I noticed something. They were actually making jokes, so straight off, I knew this was going to be better than Queen Bee, which is currently at the bottom of the unaired pilot ranking. Now, one of the running bits in this pilot is that occasionally text will come on screen that says, nice girls, ... then gives an example of something that nice girls do. You can already guess that the lesson here is going to be, you can't be nice in business. But you can, can't you? You just don't be a pushover. Being a pushover has nothing to do with being nice, so already the fundamentals of this show is already flawed. But hey, maybe it'll prove me wrong. So the nice girls moment from the 4-minute mark is that Angela is given an idea to someone, who then declares it to the group as though it was their idea, so he gets all the praise. This guy gets the vice president job because of her idea. Then Angela falls into some water. Joy's narration comes up here saying, it's going to be a bumpy day.
It's gonna be a bumpy ride.
I feel like this is so generic that you could use it over any of the pilots we've seen so far. When David Tennant collapses in court, they should have just played that music and had Jane Curtin say that.
It's gonna be a bumpy ride.
Angela goes to her boss's office, and the less we say about this scene the better. He's really one note, and it's a really bizarre scene that I don't really want to talk about.
I think those are 12-year-old girls in their underwear, Gary.
We then see another really cool transition, where we go from the building to the bar, in the form of seeing blueprints of the surrounding area. I really like this, and thought it was incredibly refreshing. Little details like this make this pilot quite special. I won't go into it too much because I'll save it for the end where I rank this among the other unaired pilots. But yeah, the transitions are brilliant, I love them. Now, I'm a big fan of Jayma Mays, and I've always wondered why she's not in more stuff. She was in the first Paul Blart Mall Cop movie, in the Smurfs movies, I think she was in an episode of Pushing Daisies, and she was in a short-lived sitcom, We're the Millers, a few years ago, but no one saw that. And apart from that, you don't see her in much mainstream stuff. The last huge thing she probably did was Glee. Oh yeah, speaking of Glee, this show has both Jayma Mays and Matthew Morrison in it. A couple of years before they were cast for that show. He really doesn't have much to do. He sings a little, is met with a poor reception from the bar, then sits at the bar and makes a couple of jokes, that's all. It's obviously we're leaving this relationship up for some future storylines, but the fact that they didn't focus on it, instead choosing to focus more on Angela's career, it made me think, what if this was never trying to be the next How I Met Your Mother? That show is all about relationships, but this sitcom barely has time for them. So the question is, what was it trying to be? Well, I think I've figured that out. Let's start by looking at the stuff it does focus on. Angela then meets Joy, her new assistant. I just knew they were going to make a joke about her name being Joy and her attitude being not so joyous. It was always going to happen, really predictable, not a very good joke. But this relationship between Joy and Angela is really the linchpin to the entire show. Angela goes to lunch with a new assistant, and for some reason, someone from her office goes from the office to the restaurant to show her some numbers, which is a bit confusing considering that they were just in the office in the previous scene. There was no need to have this restaurant scene at all. Just set it in the office. Am I an idiot for not understanding why they needed to set the scene in the restaurant, only to have the scene centre around an office memo? The only logical reason I can think of is that they had a bigger scene between Angela and Joy at dinner, and it had to be cut for time. It's even worse that they cut from the office to the restaurant and then go back to the office. Why did this restaurant scene have to be here? Nothing happened. We then get the worst Nice Girls interruption, which is Nice Girls Can't Throw. The whole premise of these things is stupid, but this one in particular is so forced and irritating. I was on board with them before this, but this one just proves that the whole system is dumb. Now, I mentioned earlier that the source material for this sitcom is a coaching book that teaches women how to achieve their personal and professional goals. But how does Girls Can't Throw teach them anything? It's ridiculous. I can get on board with everything else, but why Girls Can't Throw? I don't understand. Now, they did something really interesting with the CEO. They had a big painting of her on the wall that the boss points at and references. Now, what I'm wondering is this a painting of the actor that they cast to play the CEO in later episodes? If not, then why show this painting at all? They could have either never shown the CEO, like they did with the President in Veep, or cast them as someone at a later date. It feels silly to lock yourself into the CEO of the company looking like a painting they did. I suppose he could have always called Claire Baldwin. Oh yeah, did I mention that Catherine Hahn is in this? I don't find Catherine Hahn funny, and I never have. She is about as obnoxious in this as she is in everything else. But that aside, I can't help but wonder why her character is pregnant. You don't usually see pregnant characters on TV without them giving birth, and that being a big part of the plot. I know it's a weird rule of TV, but it is a thing. It's like Chekhov's gun. You can't have a pregnant woman without her giving birth. So this means one of two things. One, they plan to have a big episode later in the show's run where the character gave birth in the office, or Catherine Hahn was actually pregnant. I looked it up and she gave birth to her oldest son in October 2006, which was around the time that this pilot was filmed. So it's very possible that she was just pregnant in real life and they wrote it into her character. Joy goes to Angela's house and balances a bunch of stuff on her and tells her that she has to convince her to remove the items. It was at this point in the show that I realised that Joy is a stand-in for the author of the book. It took me a while to get that, didn't it? Now, I quite like the lesson here. She goes from saying, I think I deserve something, to her saying she knows that she deserves something. It was in this moment that I kind of understood what the show was going for. it's not a complete lost cause. It's just scenes like the one with Girls Can't Throw that sort of took away from it. We then end on Angela speaking up for herself and having the confidence to share her ideas with the group rather than whispering it to her co-workers. Like I said, the pilot sort of found its footing towards the end there, but I can't say that it managed to be funny at the same time. The jokes they did make weren't great, but I do sort of get what they was going for with the message. So, what exactly was this show trying to be? Well, certainly not How I Met Your Mother. That show was clearly aimed at a majority male audience. In fact, it started a really bad trend by creating a generation of men to act like Ted Mosby. Ted is an awful person. He's a bad friend, he's obsessed with love to the point where you question whether or not he truly cares about the individual woman or just the idea of her. And the worst thing of all, everything works out for him, despite his downright predatory behaviour. I know I was guilty of it when I was younger. It's difficult for me to admit, but I bought into Ted's outlook on life and it only led to me treating people poorly. But this show did not care about relationships. It was trying to be something else. I found an article from the New York Times that speaks about television audiences, particularly about ABC's audience, the network that commissioned this unaired pilot. See, unlike its competitors, ABC doesn't have sports. Without sports, it relied on a strong connection with female viewers. And since television viewership is predominantly led by women, with every network except for Fox boasting a majority female audience, it seemed only natural for them to adapt a leading guidebook to women in the workplace and attempt to turn it into binge-worthy TV. When I first started watching this pilot, I wrote it off as yet another How I Met Your Mother clone. But I was wrong. Every step of the way, it was trying desperately not to be there. I found a podcast interview with the author of the book that this show is based on, and they talk about this pilot, and they say that they're working on redoing it, so it looks like we'll see a second attempt at this show. I can only hope it's better than this one. I mean, it's no fault of the brilliant Jayma Mays, but I think the premise of the show just doesn't work on a fundamental level. So who knows if we'll ever see this on TV. Now, where does this episode rank among the other unaired pilots that we've looked at? Well, it's not as good as the David Tennant lawyer show, but it's nowhere near as bad as Queen Bee. So the question is, was this better than Freshman? If I could, I'd probably put them in the same position, but in the interest of keeping it simple, I'm going to put it between the Tennant show and Freshman. Right, if you want to see me talk about more unaired pilots, then let me know in the comments. And subscribe. Help us reach 4K. We recently hit 3K. I can't believe it. It's brilliant. Thank you so much. Right, I'll let you go. Bye.